and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duville, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man I first met a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Tim Longo.
Yep, just going ahead and scraping the bottom of that barrel now.
Going straight in to the most obvious stuff. But good. I mean, classic. You gotta go for the classic stuff. Yes, we are here with another interview, the longest interview series we've ever done.
By far.
And that's a good thing. It's a good thing. And I am excited to introduce Dave Bogan, who was a lead animator on Republic Commando. And so, Dave, I'll give your intro, and if there's any corrections you want to make afterwards, let me know if I got something wrong. So Dave started as an animator at LucasArts, as far as I can tell, 96 or 97, but we can talk about that in a sec, on Curse of Monkey Island. And then on to Grim Fandango, which he claimed to me the other night that is one of his career highlights, which I think is completely appropriate and a good highlight to have. He also worked on various other games as an animator, like Obi-Wan, Escape from Monkey Island, Rogue Squadron, which was interesting for me to see. I want to ask about that later. And then he became lead animator on Republic Commando. And then in 2005, it looks like Dave left Lucas to join Telltale, where he seemed to pretty much been involved in some way in almost all of the projects there because he was working as an art director and also the director of art, which I assume is sort of overseeing the entire art department or something like that, but we'll ask him in a second. Two other highlights for him while there was, of course, The Walking Dead and The Wolf Among Us. And then, so let's get into talking to Dave about RC, but also first and foremost, Dave, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you guys. This is I'm intimidated. This is too professional for me.
I know as soon as Brett starts, because as for the audience, when we're talking,
he's like a radio host. Awesome.
I dropped my voice down a half note, couple notes.
Now I'm scared because Tim, it looks like you did some research on me. Oh my gosh. I can't lie.
Yeah, no. This is I It is funny because in pre-show that the audience doesn't hear, it's like we're just chatting and then Brett goes into full-on radio voice. It's like, oh, wow, we're starting. There's a red light and stuff.
I'm Shadow Stevens.
So one of the places that we usually try to start, as I mentioned to you before, Dave, is the listeners just like to hear how people got into the industry and kind of what they're, if they went to a school for what they're doing, or if they got into it a different way. And then I think, Brett, correct me if I'm wrong, I always forget this, but I don't think we've had many animators on.
No, I believe this is also a first. Yeah,
yes,
I think this is our first animator.
That's probably a good thing.
No.
And maybe our last. We'll see how it goes.
I guarantee it.
No. Animators are too important, and it's terrible we haven't had more on. So so how did you start your career in games in general?
Well, oh my gosh, if I go way back, I kind of feel lucky, like I've stepped in the correct pothole almost every way along the road. And it starts in grade 8, really. Where my art teacher, I kind of taken a liking to art, and I think she noticed that. I wouldn't say I was the best in the class, but I definitely had an interest for it. And they used to have these contests where the kid with the best art at the end of the year got to paint on one of the ceiling tiles at the end. So the art classroom had this, the ceiling was covered on like a checkerboard with like all these paintings. Previous graduates. I didn't get to paint one of those damn things, which is why I decided, well, I can still draw, but maybe I should be an animator. I'm kidding.
Oh my gosh. I was expecting this nice touching story and this ceremony.
So I did guybrush Threepwood and no.
I'm just beginning. This is pre-Guybrush, I think. Yeah. So the art teacher, she pulled me aside towards the last kind of quarter of the year and said, there's this art high school called Coffey Park Secondary School, and you should start getting a portfolio together because I noticed you really seem to be into art. And it's kind of like a regular high school, except they double up your classes in art. So you'll get art all week long, and your classes will be twice as long.
Oh, so for today, in today's numbers, doubling your art would be twice zero is still zeros. That's probably a little different back then.
Is that a programmer joke?
Yeah, sort of.
So I went to this this art high school, which is kind of like, if you don't know what it is, have you ever watched Fame? I'm really making myself.
Oh, wow. Are you older than I am? I have watched Fame.
I am not even kidding you. If you picture that show with people running around the hall singing and dancing, and I'm not even joking. And our school was special because it wasn't just an art school. It was half art school and half regular high school. So there was kids in this school that were experiencing all these kids getting all this special attention and money thrown at them from the coffers of the bank or the school bank account. So you've got this very this dissected school with, art kids getting beat up by the regular kids, and, artists like stabbing people with their pens, and like, oh my God, it was terrible. A great school. It was a great school. And it was this show. I don't know if you probably don't know this show, but in Canada, there was this show called Degrassi Street.
I've heard
of it. Yeah.
Lots of people have heard of it.
It's pretty infamous, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a pretty famous show. It's very low budget, and it was all like, Toronto cast. I can't claim that everyone's from Toronto in there, but it was shot in Toronto, and with a lot of local acting talent and stuff like that. And there was a girl on the show called Spike, and she had this big spiky hairdo. And it was a pretty progressive TV show. Like, on the TV show, Spike gets pregnant in high school. So they try to teach morals and real life, right? So I go to audition. I got my portfolio with me. I go to audition at the school, and the person who opens the front door of the school is Spike. Her real name was Amanda something or other. I don't really know her last name. And I'm kind of like in a low budget Hollywood kind of way. I'm kind of starstruck because Spike opens the door, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to art school. So it was really a strange moment. But anyway, I got into this art school, and by the end of high school, I knew I wanted to do art. I stuck around for a fifth year in high school because that's what people in Canada do. They take these basically like college prep courses. They're called, in Ontario, Ontario Academic Credits. And it's basically like, if you want to go to university, you have to get at least 5 or 6 of these classes under your belt.
I did not know that.
I knew that I wanted to do something with art. I had no idea what I was going to do. My dad was a draftsman. Which wasn't quite artistic enough for me. Like, I went into job shadow my dad one time, and he was like, okay, we're going to detail these drawings. And that's basically like writing down measurements and numbers beside all these lines to tell, to tell whether the building's going to fall apart or not. And I was like, oh boy. So I drew a couple of numbers and stuff. And my dad comes over and looks at my handwriting, and he's just like,
nope, not going to work.
My dad's Scottish, so he's got a pretty thick Scottish accent. So he looks at my numbers and goes, Davey, that's chicken scratch, boy. That looks like crap. I know what you're doing for the rest of the day. You're right? You're ready? Okay, you're going to practice your alphabet, son. I was just like, oh, jeez. So for that whole day, I practiced my ABCs. And if you see my dad's handwriting, like, it looks, you picture like the, you know how beautiful the Walt Disney name looks on their art books and stuff like that around there.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
You can picture that writing in your head, right? It's very designed. It's very graphic. That's what my dad's hand printing looks like. Because when you're printing on a draft, like a blueprint, if people cannot read your writing, a building could fall down.
Right.
Or like hold up a project by your, like, spend millions or something like that. So,
yeah, on a grander scale, it's basically the problem of This Is Spinal Tap, when you accidentally put inches instead of feet.
Yeah, exactly. Stonehenge. Nice. So yeah, I practiced my alphabet there, and then I realized maybe drafting's not for me. Although I did take drafting in high school, I took a couple of classes. It was kind of fun. But at the end of high school, I was like, I don't know. I still don't know what I want to do. What can I be? I can be an illustrator, graphic designer, an architect. Like I had all these kind of ideas that were half-hearted and I didn't really have a passion for. And this kid, I was sitting at the lunchroom table, and this girl across the table from me, everyone was talking about what they're going to do next year, like going to university or college, or whatever. And this gal, Tara Campbell, I think her name was, said, "Oh, I'm going to go to Sheridan College and I'm going to go take animation." And I was like, "Animation? Wait, what do you mean? What do you mean animation?" She's like, classical animation where you draw and like you make cartoons and stuff. I was like, oh, it never dawned on me. You could do that for a job, really? And then I was just like, oh yeah, of course you can. I mean, the Disney films, like cartoons are on TV. I've been watching cartoons all my life. Oh my God, this just feels like the right thing to do. So luckily for my parents, Sheridan College was like 10 minutes up the road from my house.
Oh,
and
wow.
back then it was a 3-year program. The classical animation program at Sheridan College was pretty, I want to say world renowned. Like they had international students.
Yeah, no, I think so. It's always on the list. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, on par with like Cal Arts in Pasadena. And so it was a well-known school. All the students in their films end up going into international film festivals, yada, yada, yada. So I was like, oh my, this school is like right next to my house. And luckily for my parents, it's a 3-year program. And I think the tuition was like, it was ridiculous. I spent, it was supplies included, which includes like mounds and mounds and mounds of animation paper. I think my whole cost of college was like 10 grand Canadian or something like that.
Oh, so geez.
Amazing.
Those were the days. Not true anymore. I'm sure of Sheridan's.
The other thing that was fantastic about Sheridan at the time, and I can only speak to my time while I was there. The teachers were all industry professionals because it was there's a pro and a con to this. The pro is that it was all industry-led professionals teaching in these classes. So you had it was almost like going to work. Like you had very, very pertinent information that would be one-to-one from when you graduate to getting a job and actually getting work done. The con to that, it was a diploma instead of a degree. So I didn't get a bachelor's in art or anything like that. It was basically a community college program, if you will. But because the school had such a reputation, and during the 3 years there, I tell you, you do a lot of work. Like it's not unlike the games industry. You go into work at 9 a.m. and you're there till 9 p.m. It's not because you're forced to or whatever, but you just have that passion to finish what you've started, and you always kind of just get into what you do, and your work becomes your hobby. And whether that's healthy or not, that's up for everyone else to decide, I suppose. But you put in a tremendous amount of work over these 3 years. And somehow the fancy pants lawyers were able to word that into, oh yeah, it's totally equivalent to a bachelor's. And that's how I ended up here. I needed lawyers to help word that around, But same thing at college. So I ended up doing the 3 years at Sheridan, including my last heroic effort to get my project done, which was stay at school for 3 days, run home at 8 a.m. to take a shower, and then go straight back to school. On the end of the third day, I fell asleep in the hallway on this carpeted kind of like alcove thing. And there's a janitor poking me with the broom, telling me to wake up and go home. I was like, I was so exhausted that I decided, instead of like handing my stuff in and going home, I'm just going to fall asleep in the hallway, see what happens.
It sounds like game development. Yeah.
So, I mean, if anything, it prepped me for just working hard and finishing your projects and stuff like that. And it was a great experience. But at the end of that, I still didn't really know the same thing that happened with the high school to college transition, where you can do animation for a job. I didn't know that you could work in video games. It just never dawned on me.
Yeah.
Because at that time, like, it was still kind of just pixel art, I guess, and although they were being animated, I didn't have a real attraction to, like, I was straight into like the classical Disney stuff. I want to do the high end, 24 frames per second stuff. But at the end of the 3 years, every spring, the college opens the doors and invites all the industry people in, spring show or whatever it's called. And you would have everyone there, Disney, Fox, like all the Don Bluth Studios and everything else. And it's a pretty high pressure time for the students, obviously.
Yeah.
Where, the best people in the class, everyone knows who they are. They just stand out. They've every company would get this little room that they would be in, and they would have a list on the outside of the door on the wall, and it would have all the names of the students they wanted to speak to.
Yeah.
So here you are walking around the room looking for your name in all these places.
Oh man, that is rough.
Whoa.
Some people have none, and I know one of those people, and they just love the craft so much they stuck at it, and they just never say die, and they're at Pixar,
Oh, that's great.
It was not the be all end all if you weren't on that list, but
yeah.
I think
good lesson learned. Stick with it.
You have to stick with it, and if it's your love, you just got to put in the time. You got to put in the devotion and the time.
Yeah,
and you can get anywhere you want to get. I think I only showed up on a couple of lists. I think I remember having an interview with ILM, LucasArts, and I want to say these people, I don't think at the time had a list, but they were talking to people anyway. It was Squaresoft, who were set up in Hawaii.
Oh yeah.
Wild,
the old Hawaii studio. An infamous story.
A couple of my buddies got hired there, and they were making right out of school. They were making like $80,000 a year. They were buying motorbikes and freaking living in Hawaii like Magnum PI. It was crazy.
Yeah,
Magnum PI.
I assume that must have been Sakaguchi there then.
Yeah, they had started that
because he's still there. He's not with Square anymore.
I remember talking to these guys, and I was like, how is it over there? How was it? It must have been amazing. He's like, these guys had no idea what they were doing. Like, they hired a bunch of knucklehead students, and we don't know what we're doing, and blah, blah, blah. And, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, I think primarily that studio was one of the focuses, I believe, wasn't it, to work on the Final Fantasy film. It was going to be and that did come out, but I think
that's right. Yeah.
I think they had to pull it to Japan and eventually, and then they closed all that. It was a failed experiment, I think. But your Magnum PI reference is proof that all of our references in this episode are way too old.
Well, if anyone's listening to this, now we've given you some cool inspiration to dig up.
That's right.
Yeah, awesome retro 70s movie.
There you go.
So I was getting to the list there. I spoke to Square, I spoke to ILM, and I spoke to LucasArts, obviously. And that got me real excited, because it sent me back to my house that evening, and I went out to the store and bought a LucasArts treasure pack or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember.
And it had Full Throttle, Sam and Max Hit the Road, and I think Day of the Tentacle, or maybe Indiana Jones or something like that.
Yeah. That's a great pack.
Yeah, it was a great one. And that summer I played those games over and over and over. And I did have an interview at the school, I believe. I want to say there's certain people I remember. I don't know if they were at the interview or not, but I remember Kevin Boyle and Chris Miles, who were.
Oh my goodness.
So those two guys were actual Sheridan grads. They graduated a few years ahead of me. And I think they were in Graham Annabelle's class.
Oh, wow.
Holy cow. What a
who's who.
So, so obviously LucasArts got on that boat, right? They heard there's a school in Canada.
Right.
And they're kicking out really, really decently informed animation students, and they were moving on from pixel art into drawing on paper and then scanning in and colorizing. And it kind of started this trend where, LucasArts would go to Sheridan every year and pick up some grads. So I have Kevin and Chris to thank for my career. Foremost, those guys, great guys, kind of formed an immediate bond with those guys, and they got me the job at LucasArts. I want to even say like Karen. No, I met Karen Cellini very early on.
Right, because she was running.
There was a human resources person, I believe, that came down to the school too. I wanted
like Sangeeta Prashar maybe or something.
It was before Sangeeta.
Oh yeah.
I think she had kind of reddish hair. Her name was Lisa, I think.
Yeah, that rings a bell. Yeah. So didn't Kevin go on? He was at Telltale for a while, right?
Yeah, Kevin came to Telltale for a little while, more than a little while. He was there for a few years, and I think he was wasn't he at Sega before Telltale? Like, didn't he do?
Yeah, he did. He was at Secret Level. Yeah,
Secret Level. That's right.
Yeah. He did a few things. I couldn't tell you how many times I played StarCraft with Chris Miles. I mean,
we had Telltale was basically like, a LucasArts incubator. We had so many people from Telltale there. From LucasArts there. It was amazing.
Yeah. So that was it. So was Curse of Monkey Island the first thing you worked on based on your credits? Or okay, cool. Wow.
Yeah, I worked on that. I honestly don't even remember how many little animations I did. I remember working on Guybrush. I remember him making some kind of like pole with some kind of thing on the end. He was sticking it out of a porthole, trying to do something. I don't even know.
Oh, right. Yeah, he's trying to get Murray's head out of the drink, I think.
Yeah, that's right. And then then it was some other one where he had a saw. I remember doing some saw animation or something. But I also remember it being my when I had an offer from ILM and I had an offer from LucasArts. Wow. And the financial offer was very different. And right off the bat, my decision came down to, okay, if I go to this one place, LucasArts, I'm going to get a little less money, but quite a bit for that. Like when you go down to that much money, but entry level stuff, or I can go to ILM, so I can work on movies, but it's all 3D, or I can go to LucasArts and work on these cool games I just played, and I'll still get to draw, and I'll get to do 3D. I'll get to do both because they're kind of. I can't remember what the first 3D project was. Do you guys remember? Was it? Wasn't it? It's not Jedi Knight, was it?
Might have been Jedi Knight.
Yeah.
I think so, because that was Ray Gresco's baby to do 3D with.
I mean, that was real time, right? But I mean.
Oh yeah, I mean, in terms of something that may have had 3D in it, that would be different. Maybe.
No, that was probably it.
Or was it Dark? No, Dark Forces wasn't 3D.
Dark Forces.
No, that was all 2D.
It had 3D, worlds, but the
it's 3D worlds, but it was all sprites for the characters. Yeah.
So that was my choice based on do I get to draw or not?
Interesting.
And not only that, but the games they were doing had a lot of comedy in them.
Yeah,
right.
I think that won me over. I was like, oh man, Sam and Max was just a blast, and Full Throttle was so cool, and
they're fun, right? It's a fun atmosphere to be around.
Even on the airplane on the way to California, I think I was playing a game. I don't know how that's possible. That's never mind. That's just bananas.
They didn't have laptops back then, so it's hard to say how you could have done that.
That must have been on one of my trips home for Christmas or something.
So I mean, Curse being like a perfect game to come onto then because of your 2D animation, background and desires. Was like obviously a progression from the Full Throttles of the world, but it was the most closely cartoon sort of traditional.
It was the final Scum game as well, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, was it? Yeah. Right.
I was really inspired. I came in and, I kind of hit my stride with drawing, so I was feeling really comfortable. And then I could always look up to the other artists on the team, like Derek Sakai was doing a lot of great LeChuck animation, and Mark Overney was doing some great stuff. Kevin McAuliffe, who was a really established 2D animation guy in Toronto. I think he moved back to Toronto. He's got his own company now. And Graham Annable, of course, he was doing a lot of stuff. So I had all these, and And I think Chris Miles may have been the animation lead on that, or the lead artist. Maybe.
I think you're right. Yep, I think he was.
Bill
The lead
Tiller,
artist would have sort of been Larry as well, because, he was co-project lead, I guess, with
Bill Tiller,
with,
I think, was,
Jonathan.
Yeah, I
yeah.
don't remember how that all worked. It kind of developed over the next few years in terms of like what the staffing was.
Yeah.
I don't really remember there being art directors on the projects.
There might have not been traditional.
I'm sure there was.
Yeah. I mean, because Larry and
Republic Commando, you were an art director.
Well, so we talked
Tim,
about
you were kind of the guy making the calls when we're all looking at the art on the walls and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that on previous episodes. It was a little bit different for us because Chris Williams started out as the art director and basically was throughout the production. But what he ended up, if you recall, what he ended up doing was sort of going into production and kind of becoming sort of the sort of lead producer under Daron. And then eventually, once Daron started doing additional stuff, he kind of became, the EP.
Chris was
he was
definitely
half and
a
half.
natural producer.
Yeah.
He would do these things. Like artists always talk, their heads are in the clouds, right? They're all talking about things they want to do. And, we should do this. And we're going to do this. I have this great idea. I'm going to take this clone. He's going to do a backflip. And Chris would just smile the whole time. And he's listening to you with one ear. Meanwhile, he knows exactly what he's going to say at the end of when you stop talking. Yeah, that's great. But you know what? Here's what you're going to do. And he would just keep smiling and he would lay out the plan and say, okay, that's it. Now, right, let's do it.
Chris, yeah. And that's why he's an executive today.
Yes, exactly. It's like, I know what you're going to do. That stuff's great. Those are great ideas, but here's what you're going to do.
Yeah. Well, so what was the transition to 3D then from Curse? Was it Obi-Wan next or what was, or was it Escape from Monkey Island?
Grim Fandango's 3D.
Oh, okay. So that was right. And you were doing character animation there too.
So if you look back at those things, I looked at my some old cutscene stuff that we had done from that just the other day, actually, and I want to say that the characters are like, I don't even know if they're like 100 polygons. Like they're so low poly. Like a character's head would have been like a 20-sided die at most. Yeah,
it's an elongated rectangle. Yeah,
exactly. But it's kind of amazing, with those restraints, what you can get out of it, just by injecting the voice acting and the music and the writing,
Yeah.
So
then Grim, and then obviously similar to that would be Escape, being in the same engine and sort of style. But you told me a story the other night, which we can maybe hit on briefly with Obi-Wan, where you did cinematics, it sounds like, primarily.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, coming in.
No. I was on Obi-Wan I wasn't on from the very beginning, and I don't remember the order. I remember Eric Ingerson and Graham Annable were both on the project at one point as like the lead animator. And I want to say Eric may have left and went to Tippett Studios.
Yeah, I think I remember that, actually.
And then Graham became the lead on there. I think that's right. I can't be sure.
We're not fact checking on here, by the way, so you don't have to.
No, but I mean, we had a lot of fun, and we did all the gameplay animation. Obviously, it was a pretty small team. I don't even remember who else. I remember Troy Mullender was on the project as like an art tech.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, of course, Connors, right? Dan Connors. And
Dan Connors was producer. Yeah. So Kevin Bruner was one of the programmers. John Hancock, who also worked on Republic Commando, was on the programming staff.
Chris Ross, right, was also, I believe.
Ross, Ryan Kaufman.
Design. Yeah.
Steve McManus, I think, maybe.
I can believe that.
He might have been.
Pinecone was on there.
Pinecone. Jeff Kong, yeah. And
Ian Mellon, I think, was on the project for a little bit of time. And he went on to do some great things, man. Like he did. I think he worked on Dead Space with my current boss, Brett Robbins.
Yeah, he was art director on Dead Space, and he's working on Mandalorian now as essentially an interactive or a real-time CG soup.
Yeah, and when Brett started up Ascendant almost 2 years ago now, he in fact wanted to hit up Ian Milne as his art director. So sadly, he got stuck with me. Yeah, so he's had a great career and he's doing great stuff over there.
So what about a Rogue Squadron I saw on the list? Was that something you guys were doing to help out, or was that, because that was Factor 5?
Oh, God. Okay, so in my warped sense of history here, my first project was Monkey 3. And then I went on to Grim Fandango. I think that lasted about a year and a half to get all the animation done for that. After Grim, I worked on a project called Justice Unlimited, which was super cool.
Yeah, Stemley, right?
It was like Diablo, but superheroes.
Yeah, right.
Stemley and Patrick McCarthy, maybe, were the programming squad on there.
Yeah,
and we had I swear we had 75-80% of the animation done for all the characters, and we just started to work on these cutscenes where it was all being done like comic book panels.
Yeah,
so
that's cool.
And ahead of the curve too, because that hadn't really been done yet in games.
Yeah, so we were super stoked. I started drawing like comic book stuff at that point, and then the project got canned for whatever reason, as they do. And I still remember, I think it was Kamala Boswell who came over and kind of gave us the news. And we're just, our hearts just sunk. We're like, we got all the grunt work done and we're getting into the juicy cutscene stuff. And then it gets pulled out and we're like, oh.
Yeah. I'd forgotten about Justice Unlimited. Yeah. Because that would have been what Stemley did after Afterlife or something.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. It was right. Yeah. And Pat
and Sean Clark had gone to do the
Force
Commander. 3D, Force Commander.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yep, because Pat was also on Afterlife. Because I actually was testing I did some testing on Afterlife. I remember working with him as a programmer on that. So they probably went on together to work on that. Yeah. Until I saw it on your resume, I forgot about it too. And that was a bummer.
So they had this team, a bunch of artists and others that they had nothing to put them on basically at that point. And I think, what is that company called again?
Factor 5.
Factor 5. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Factor 5 was in the middle of doing Rogue Squadron, and I think they just needed to throw us on something. So we know you guys are animators, but we need some models built for Rogue Squadron. So that was my first professional experience doing any kind of modeling and texturing, is I got to do a couple of buildings or something for Rogue Squadron.
Right. Wow.
I mean, I will say it's to the company's credit that they were not a layoff company.
Yeah, totally.
And even then, the industry was going that way. I mean, it was certainly a thing that was starting to happen more because teams had gotten bigger or started to get bigger around this time. So it's to LucasArts' credit. Maybe a little bit too far at sometimes, but that they worked really hard not to do that. And I think the same was true of ILM as well at the time. So,
yeah, in fact, I even remember, I think when Grim ended, there was a few weeks where we weren't on a project. And I remember Chris Miles trying to get all the animators to do a short. Just to do an animated 2D short. And it had something to do with a devil. I can't remember what the concept was.
Of course, Chris. Yeah, I mean,
I want to say it was like Devil at the DMV or some crap like that. I don't know what it was. Everyone hated that DMV down in Corte Madera, so that was
that's true.
Having a bunch of Canadian transplants who had come over, fresh over the border and trying to get their licenses at the DMV, obviously was a hot topic.
A uniquely Canadian short,
and of course nothing came out of it. We did not make a film or anything like that.
Sure.
The lawyers wouldn't have wanted one. So
yeah,
especially bad mouthing the California government.
Yeah. So what was so then post that era, Republic Commando happens. And what was you were telling me a little bit about some of the early conversations about having you come over, specifically one with Daron Stinnett, which I want you to retell.
All right.
But how did you get that gig?
I'm pulling up my chair. I'm rubbing my hands.
Well, I really kind of, I feel like I cut my teeth on Obi-Wan, where there wasn't a lot of people on the project. So I really had to get in there and get actually involved in the project and talk to other people in departments and things like that. And I had worked with the engineers a lot and really wasn't just focused on animation, but okay, how does animation get used in the game and how does it get hooked up by the programmers? And
oh yeah, actually, can you tell, you were telling me about the lightsaber stuff you did with Kevin on that. I think that'd be good for the listeners too to talk about.
Sure. So
that relationship, yeah.
Right, yeah. So that's when I started, because there were so few people on the team and because it was kind of tumultuous with the animation lead on the project. Like I think Eric left to go to Tippett, and I think Graham at some point got pulled off near the end and had to go lead another project. I think one of the prequel projects or something like that. So near the end, I was like, okay, I guess I'm in charge or something. I guess I got to figure this out. So I started working with visiting the programmer's office a lot. And Kevin, I don't know if he was the lead engineer, but he was gameplay engineer or something. Or whatever.
He was the lead engineer.
He was
the lead engineer on Obi-Wan.
So I started looking at the way that Obi-Wan was kind of swinging his sword around, and then they put the visual effects on the lightsaber, and you can see everything is moving in these straight lines, and like the tracing from the lightsaber glow was like moving, and every time it changes direction, it was in a 90-degree angle, and it looked really bad and crap. And I was like, that's not how it looks in the movies. Like we could do better. So I would go into Kevin's office and we would work out all the directions that he could swing the saber in and like how it was going to be blending from one animation to the other. Cause it's got to be responsive to the players on the thumbstick. And so we started working on that and all the arcs. And I think at the time there was also this crazy mouse glyph system they were trying to do for.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That was.
Yeah. Oof. Yeah.
So then obviously when we tried it, ended up aborting that, it went into full on kind of like console-y mentality, swinging the sword around. So I worked with Kevin a lot on trying to get that stuff to look good.
Yeah. And I think
I the last part of the project was like, oh my God, I think I don't want to say it, but I mean, I think everyone knew it was kind of like a sinking ship, but we were too close to port to actually sink it. So we had to sail it home, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It came time to do the cutscenes, and we had all these cutscenes to do. And it wasn't like super elaborate, like fighting stuff or anything crazy. It was just a bunch of dialogue. And we didn't really have a great plan for that. So when we had very short amount of time to do it. So I remember Dan Connors called a few of us into a meeting, and we were talking about how we're going to do this. And I jokingly threw out the idea, this is a horrible idea, and I should probably not even attach my name to it.
You don't have to.
I'm gonna, because I was a rookie. I was like, you guys need me to get this job done. Here's how we can do it. It's not a great way, but we're going to do it. So if you notice in the cutscenes, whenever someone's talking, the camera is not on them. It's on the person that's listening to them talking. That was literally like, we do not have any way to get this done. And
yeah.
I remember looking, I think we had this software called Magpie or something like that, where you could type in the script lines, and it would spit out a bunch of phonemes, or visemes rather, to show you how to animate the mouth to the voice line. And I think we used a program similar to that on Grimm too, and you would just do the texture replacements. But I think I remember using that stuff on there, and it looked so bad. I was so disheartened, and there was no time to do any facial animation. I don't even know if there was bones in the face. Like they might have.
I would be surprised if there were. I mean, you were mostly seeing the back of his head. So.
Yeah, it was a horrible, horrible thing, and it was something that needed to get done, and it was the worst feeling in the world to have to do something like that. But it got done, and
you're much better off, in my opinion, taking a helmet and putting it over the character's head.
Well, Jedi's helmets,
Speaking of,
yeah. Well, after that one, anyway, I learned a lot of lessons on that project, and if I were to take any positive out of that experience, is like, how can you get that far along in a project and not have a plan for that?
Yeah,
that's terrible, right?
Yeah.
So like that was my first time where I was like, okay, well, no one made a plan for this, so I'm going to do it next time. If no one's doing it, I'm at least going to ask about it and make sure someone's thinking about it.
Yeah,
and that, I think that struck out kind of a personality in me where like I guess I like to take on responsibility, and I want to make sure that things are planned out and that we actually have a plan that we can knock out. So
yeah,
I think management kind of took a notice of that, and that's where I kind of first started to think about doing lead stuff. So I don't remember what the next project was. I don't know if it was Republic Commando or if it was Bounty Hunter.
Would have been Bounty Hunter.
I think it was Bounty Hunter, and they already had a lead animator on there. So Armando Chooch, do you guys remember Armando?
Oh yeah,
oh yeah.
So he was the lead animator on there, and I went on to that project for a couple months and just worked on a bunch of. We did some gameplay stuff, I think I did, but it was a lot of cutscene work, and just grueling cutscenes. I remember I animated this one cutscene of Django. Luckily, he had a helmet on. Yeah. It was Django and this alien guy. I can't remember his name, but they were in an elevator for like 2 minutes. In a conversation of 2 minutes of people talking to each other, and I was so happy to have face bones and animation going on with that. I was just like, oh,
it was the best elevator conversation ever.
I probably wasn't, but they had some cool characters on that game. Like the villain Montross was really cool, and there was this blue guy with big long ears. I can't remember his name. He was fun to animate.
Well, that was Corey Navage, or not Navage, Corey
Alamir.
Yeah, right.
Almeyer, yeah.
Yeah, Almeyer, yep. He's a great concept artist and great character designer.
Yeah, his characters, oh my God, on that wall, all of his art. I mean, his spaceships and
very good.
So good. Very inspiring. So the character designs and the models were great, and they actually worked properly. Like when you move an eyebrow, it works, and when you select both eyes and make them look to the right, it works. And why am I saying this? Because that was not the case on Escape from Monkey Island. That's the fourth one, right?
Yeah.
I remember. Yeah. Okay. So I don't know why, but for some reason I ended up getting all these really long cutscenes. Maybe they think I like long cutscenes or something. So on that monkey game, I had to animate LeCharles. So LeCharles was LeChuck's politicized version of himself. He was like human and a politician, running for governor or something like that. And he was on stage talking to a crowd of drunken pirates, and I don't know how long the cutscene was. It felt like forever. It was like a minute long or something. And he had to basically give a speech. And when you select the eyeballs on this character, it was very early on. It was like very early 3D stuff. And the eyes weren't even geometry. Well, there was some geometry there, but what you're moving around was not the geometry. It was textures. So
oh my goodness.
You'd select the eyes, and then you have some controls. You can look up, you can look down, you can look left, and you can look right. And that all worked fine. If you moved the eyes up, they went up. If you moved them down, they moved down. Left, they go left. Right, they go right. But if you were to try to make them move up and to the left, you would expect that both eyes are now looking diagonally up at like 10 o'clock, or 11 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
Well, that wasn't the case. One would go that way, and the other one would go the complete opposite way, over to the right side. And you're like, what the hell is going on? So it kind of gave this, obviously really constrained me as what I could do with the eyes. And as an animator, if you know anything, it's all about the eyes and the face and the hands. Those are your acting tools.
Yeah.
So if you're doing a speech on stage for a minute and you can't rely on your eyes, you ain't got a lot going on for you. So I did it anyway, and I think I did a half decent job. But if you look at him, he kind of looks wall-eyed the whole time, and it really kind of, in my opinion, kind of adds to his character. He had this weird kind of like Tim Curry gaze or something.
That's amazing.
It's intentional. It worked out, and then
it kind of gave you the vibe of like a lying politician. It's like, he can't even keep his eyes straight on the audience. It's very strange feeling.
Right.
Grog. I remember.
Well, good. With Republic Commando, we took away two of your most important tools: the eyes and the face. By putting the helmet on.
And as I remember, there wasn't a hell of a lot of cutscenes in there. I think it was all kind of like
No, it was first person the whole time, right? We had literally no cutscenes, other than unless you call those, gunship sequences that you still can look around, but it's, you know, your feet are stuck in place and you're just seeing stuff out
I mean,
the window.
there's a scene on an elevator where it's basically the form, or in the ship before you get on the prosecutor,
Yep.
where they're all standing around. I remember how much fun you guys had with just animating. It was probably Lauren Cox, who was a I don't know what you'd say. He was kind of an outdoors guy. He loved like parasailing and all that kind of stuff.
He ended up does now.
That's what he went into. I know he went and worked for some magazine for a while or something like that, doing that. But I've lost track of Lauren entirely.
So he does graphic design for wingsuits and flying. He actually does flying squirrel crap. Like he flies.
Holy cow!
Wow. He's like a Republic Commando. That guy.
He's in the real one. That's great.
Well, that's what I always assumed. It's him who did that scene where they jumped to the prosecutor, because that's totally his thing.
That started it off probably. Now he lives in Utah and he jumps off mountains with a squirrel suit. Like he's
that's crazy.
He's always been he was a big skateboarder. In fact, I just contacted him recently because I've been taking my son to the skate park here in Marin. And I got all nostalgic and got myself one of those old 80s shaped boards and started.
Oh no, you're going to break something.
Yeah, eventually. Yeah, I go the small stuff, the starter stuff, and get in and get out easily enough.
So tell what
I contacted Lauren, and that's what that brought up this old stuff and these old memories as well, which is awesome.
Yeah, it was a team that, and we talked about this with each interview, and throughout the series. I mean, the team was close. It was a close knit team, and I think a lot of us still keep in touch. And when you and I reconnected just the other day, it was just like old time. It was like no time had passed, and I think that was a testament to the project in that regard. But tell your Daron story. Tell your Daron story about getting. You gotta share that one, even if it's just for Brett's sake, about the sort of first time you're talking to the EP of the project.
It wasn't long since I was off Obi-Wan, and I think I had talked to Karen Chelini and Matt White, who I think might have been the art here at the time. And so after Obi-Wan, I let them know, I want to do this lead animation thing. So if you have any opportunity for me to do that, I'd love to do that. And they acknowledged that, and they had that on the mind. And obviously I was like next in line or whatever. So, but they had to find a place for me to go. I went over to Bounty Hunter for 6 months or something like that. And then this project came up. And I don't know how. I knew Chris Williams before I worked on that project. I don't remember how we got to know each other, other than him being another Canadian. Maybe there was just that connection or something.
Goes a long way.
You're hanging out at the DMV together.
Probably. Anyway, so I get invited into, I heard news from Matt or something that, Republic Commando is going to need was it even called that at the very beginning? Didn't it have kind of...
No, probably not.
It's called 1138.
You're right.
Yeah, for a long time that was just it. I mean, there was a point when it was called Clone Commando, right? And then we kind of shifted it away from. Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
So I went. I was told that I had a meeting with Daron Stinnett, who was going to be the head honcho on the project there, and that I was going to be assigned to this project. And now it's starting to get real for me. I'm like, oh, okay, now I'm actually going to be responsible for this stuff. And because, I was thinking a lot about our competition and the other games that were out there, like Medal of Honor and all these shooter games. And they were doing a lot of good stuff. Like the stuff that I really wanted to get in was like, what are the enemies doing when they don't know that you're there? State machine kind of driven stuff, and trying to make the characters feel like real beings and not just things that run at you as soon as they come on screen, I guess. But anyway, so I go to this meeting with Daron Stinnett, and you know how Daron is. He's very kind of like, he's cordial and pleasant, but he's also he's got a serious tone to him, and he's quiet and you interpret that as like, he's trying to read my mind. He's testing me. He's studying me. I said, am I good enough? I don't know.
He's testing for weakness.
Yeah, he's trying to break me. And so I go in there, and Daron's, very matter of fact about, so we got, you're going to be a lead animator, and here's what I expect of you, and here's all the things that you'll be responsible for, like all this real job stuff. I'm like, oh my God. It's not like, hey man, you're going to be the lead animator. This is going to be great. It's going to be so much fun. Like, what ideas do you have? And it was very, very professional and real. And I was very intimidated, and I didn't know what to think. It's like, oh my God, I'm really going to have.
What have I gotten myself into?
Talking about the competition and how, we want to try our best to make this a AAA effort. And I don't even know if that was a phrase back then, but he's like, our inspiration and our competition is Halo. So of course everyone's playing Halo on the team, and I'm looking at this stuff going, oh my God,
yeah,
we got to roll up our sleeves, man. Like this is hot competition and very polished work. So yeah, I came out of that office like super excited and also just shaken and like, oh my God, this is on me, man. Like I gotta organize all this stuff and try to create a mountain of work with super high quality in it. And so that was my first experience meeting Daron.
Yeah, I think that was all of our first experiences. That was my...
He was always very clean cut and well dressed and like professional, super professional. And here I am in my pajama pants, because you could wear whatever you wanted to LucasArts, I guess.
Yeah. He was. And I think that you're not alone with that experience, because he's a professional dude, and I think he brought all of us up, to a quality because of that. And that, that was, I agree with you. I think that there was a certain uniqueness to that quality that he had at LucasArts. He was sort of the buttoned up one.
Yeah, he was.
I certainly also dressed better for a lot of years than I might have otherwise. So there's that.
I didn't. I just couldn't. I went to art school.
Couldn't do it.
But yeah, I'm thankful that Daron let me be on that project and that he gave me that responsibility. And luckily, we had a killer animation team. Like, Ryan Hood, Brett Schultz, Lauren Cox, Rebecca Perez, Jeremy Talbot was part of the animation team. So we had a great connection again with the programmers too, because I remember Nathan Martz, who was like super, and I think John Hancock might have been doing AI stuff too a little bit.
Yep, the two of them were, yeah.
But they were really hyped up on, and probably through you too, Tim, is that each of these enemies needs to feel different. They need to be an archetype, and they need to act behaviorally different from one another, and they all have to have unique things. And so there was a lot of conversations between the animators and the engineers, again, which I thought was like, why didn't this happen in the past? You just kind of throw your animation over the shelf, and then a month later you see it in the game and it's been ripped apart and tortured in some way, and you're just like, why?
Yeah,
it's so easy. You just talk to each other. Oh, that's how you mean it should work? Oh, okay, I get it. Just like I can't even imagine being a programmer and having all this stuff come over the wall at you, and you're just like, how do you put it? It's like Jenga. It's like a puzzle.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, you're basically asking your programmers to be animators as well, right? And then they're just like, well, they don't know what the hell they're doing, right? So they're like, well, let me just put it in even chunks. Make them all the same length, I don't know. Like, I'm thinking, like, what if I didn't know anything about animation, which I didn't for a long time, those are the sorts of things I would be doing. Like, well, all these files should be about the same size, because then they'll come in, because I'm always thinking about the hardware. So, I could just imagine what it must have been like not talking with the people who were using your work, but this is just nuts.
So we mentioned Daron kind of being like almost like a fatherly figure of video games for us during that time. And I still consider myself a kid back then. I was in my early 20s or whatever. There was another moment on the I would say the grandfather of the team was this guy, Joe.
Yeah, Joe. Yes, I looked.
Bacciocco.
Yeah. Bacciocco.
I looked up his last name. I might even be butchering it, and I apologize, Joe, if I am. Joe Bacciocco was a 35-year veteran from the Marines or the Army.
No, he was Navy SEAL. He was Navy SEAL.
Well, I think he was in the Army branch, but I think he was basically one of the guys who go up the rivers in Vietnam in those little boats that you see. And like, imagine being in the middle of a river in a boat with bushes on both sides of you, how open and vulnerable you are. And they would drive up the rivers and then go infiltrate, the adversary, as he calls them. I can't even imagine that portion of life.
Super intense, dude.
I was like, to this day, like, not many teams have gone to that length to bring someone in to kind of teach people something on how to do something. And we were very intent on making the game, giving it a gritty and a realistic kind of vibe, in comparison to some of the other Star Wars stuff, which I'd say is way more fantasy driven. We wanted this kind of like gritty, realistic tone stuff. So they brought in this guy, Joe, and he basically taught the animation team how to stand in formation and how to breach doors and all the rules of engagement and, little things like you don't put your finger on the trigger of your gun unless you've made that decision to shoot your adversary. It does not go on the trigger. It goes above it. And when you make that decision to kill someone, that's when it goes on the trigger. So if you look at the animation in the game, I hope it's there, but I think I remember us, making sure we had the fingers straight, our index finger straight along the barrel. And then when they do the fire animation, it's part of the fire animation. The finger comes off the side and hits the trigger.
Yeah.
Little things like that. He taught us how, and this is where I feel bad too, because the reality of when you start putting this animation in the game and it needs to function like a video game, some of these rules he taught us kind of fell apart.
Yeah.
But
there's things like you can't pull the gun down, for example, when you cross cross somebody. Yeah.
I'm sure he's rolling over right now going, oh my God, what did I taught these guys? What are they doing?
Right. Yeah.
And, so he taught us how to door breach, and I remember him teaching, we're all in single file. So in the
butts to nuts, man.
In the game, you see them on both sides of the door. And I'm not sure if that's protocol or not. Like we learned single file, you're doing high carry or low carry, so you're never crossing your squad mate in front of you with your barrel of your gun.
Yeah.
You go to the ceiling if you want to cross, or you go to the floor. And you're in single file when you breach in, and the first guy rounds the corner, and every single one, if there's 4 of you, you've all got a job to do. You know that when you're lead guy, you curl the door and you stick on the wall and you go to each corner of the room, and each one of you knows which corner you're going to be at and what your job is. So you can imagine that first guy in is the most vulnerable.
Yeah.
And funny enough, like if you curl that door and you go to the right and you're supposed to get to that one corner, your job is not to hit the guy in the other corner of the room.
Right.
It's second in or something like that. So like there's very specific rules that I'm sure are built on statistics and actualities. And if you break those rules, that's when chaos happens and people start to screw up,
Yeah.
So he taught us all this stuff, and
there's
I'm sure none of it stuck.
Well, I know. I think that I think we referenced it on previous episodes, but there's the making of sort of behind the scenes video that is at least on the disc. I couldn't find it on YouTube. I don't know if
it's on YouTube. I watched it on YouTube. I'll throw it.
Oh
in
yeah,
the
you
show
should put it in
well.
because it shows it's the one that the company made for the game, and it interviews you, it interviews Joe.
Yeah.
And it shows videos of you guys doing these exercises with him in conference rooms in LucasArts.
Yeah, in the mezzanine.
Yeah, and you can see, and he is so intense. Like,
he really is. But what I was going to say is like he's intense and he's factual and direct. But within 5 minutes spending with this guy, you feel like he's your grandfather, and you see how much he cares for people.
Yeah,
it's amazing. Like he's not just he was a war machine, right? But this guy, you can tell when he's in charge and he's teaching you something, he cares about your life.
Yeah.
Literally your life. I'm going to teach you the right way. So if this happens to you, you're going to know what to do. It's going to be driven into you. It's going to be instinct, and you're going to survive.
Yeah, he's teaching people to survive. Yeah.
So I remember a funny story about that one day. We're all sitting around in a circle, standing around in a circle, and Joe's talking to us, teaching stuff, and randomly he just comes out. He was trying to teach, specifically what weapons you should use within certain proximities or something like that. Different situations you might be in. You might be in a room, like a larger room, a 20 by 20 room, or you might be in a tight hallway. Well, what weapon? Because he was trying to dig in and ask questions to say, well, what kind of game are you building? So like, are you going to have this situation or this situation? So he could volunteer more kind of like pertinent kind of advice on certain situations. And for whatever reason, he calls up, and I think he was looking at Lauren when he said this, and he goes, now, because we were all holding kind of like these rifle props. And he's like, now, if I have a knife and you have that gun right there, and we're in this hallway, and we're standing 10 feet apart from one another, who do you think's going to survive? And we all just kind of like nervously laughed. And we're like, oh my God, really? And it was like, and I think Lauren might have said, me. He was joking around. I got the gun. And he like points it at him. And Joe was just like, no, it's going to be we're like, oh my God. But he was trying to teach, like, you know, in a smaller, tighter hallway, if you got a long barreled weapon, it's you're at a disadvantage to swinging this thing around and poking it. He can move from wall to wall and get in close. And once he's in close and he's got a knife, you're just dead. Yeah. There's nothing you can do. Like, he'll get you. You might get him, but the chances are he's hungry anyway.
And, you know, I think despite, to your point about like what ended up in the game and the door breach and stuff, and, you know, we ultimately had to make decisions that fit the game, the franchise, the gameplay, you know, and what kind of looked good for
I was going to say also just sort of visuals of what, because if ever all the commandos are on one side of the door, most people's instincts would be, that doesn't look right, even though they'd be totally wrong. You know?
Yeah. It's the kind of the compositional aspect. However, the thing I will say, even though it may not have been a 1-for-1 for what Joe was saying, I think the authenticity still translated. I think you guys, the commandos
do duck in front of your field of fire, for example, right? I mean, there's
a
they
lot
care.
Of detail. Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, we did as much as we could and we tried, but it just, you know, it just happens. Like the first video I looked at, and I see the door breach and they're on both sides of the door. I was like, did Joe actually tell us to do that or not? I'm like, oh.
Yeah. Well, and I've actually, no, it does. And I think that's where the, you know, I don't know if Joe is, I don't know if you even ever saw the end result, you know, the end product, and if he was disappointed or not. But I think the general, because I've worked with, since Republic Commando, I've worked with consultants like this as well, who are ex-military. And, you know, I think that over time they've sort of started to understand that they're there for the authenticity of the details. It may not be a 1-for-1, but it does help the animators specifically, you know, have the sort of spirit of it.
It informs
it.
Yeah. It definitely informs it.
And I still think even just like watching that behind the scenes video of you guys going through, and then watching the even just the walk, the armed walk animation of the commandos, even when they're just walking down a hallway or running down a hallway, it looks more tactical than, say, a stormtrooper in the films or in another game. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it looks different.
I think we set our sights on something more gritty and realistic and military, and I think we hit it. You know,
totally.
Right things. We brought in a guy who knows what he's talking about, and we all got into that spirit.
Yeah.
And we were all at lunchtime playing Call of Duty and Medal of Honor. And, and I think we picked up stuff from that too, you know?
Yeah. It was, you know, it's one of those animation teams in my career and in my memory that I feel like was really well integrated into the team. And you guys really were like dialed into what you wanted to do. It was actually cool because you and I maybe had talked about this back then, but I had forgotten it was a buttoned up group as far as animators go. And you telling the stories you just told on this episode of just your lessons learned about just being, you know, planning and being sort of ready and like having a plan, you know, it kind of now makes sense to me because you guys had the artistic spirit, but I feel like you, Dave, specifically also always had the organization and just like, we're going to like move through this content in a good fashion. And I always appreciate that as well.
I think, you know, partially, like, I don't remember a super huge cast on that game in terms of enemies to animate.
No, it wasn't in the grand scheme of things. It wasn't. No. Again, we went for archetypes, right? So each one,
Right. Yeah.
we got the mileage out of mixing them up rather than having, 40 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Were there any, well, we're coming up on time, so I want to be sensitive to your time, but, were there any enemy stories specifically that you can think of? And if not, that's cool. Because we had, like, if you think of the Trandoshan specifically.
Oh, I was just going to say that one stood
Yeah.
out. And especially because before the podcast, I started watching old videos of the game just to refresh my memory.
Yeah.
I had no memory of that guy running like a gorilla. Like he actually at one point gets on all fours and charges at you like a crazy freaking gorilla.
Yeah.
Yep. Is it Bosk who shows up in Empire? Is that the first time you see a Trandoshan?
Yeah, he's the first Trandoshan
He's
you
just
see.
kind of like this upright, super tall, stiff guy who doesn't move at all. And all of a sudden, he's like rabid gorillas running at you with a knife in their teeth. It's like great. But yeah, we were in the mindset of just like pushing archetypes, like you were saying, and really trying to make the characters feel different from one another. And how we got away with that one, I don't know, but it felt right.
Well, do you remember the one you didn't get away with? This was very late in the project.
Which one's that?
So we had that system that Nathan had done at my direction to make the paired animations of there were kills, basically paired kills, mostly for the Wookiees. And we had already submitted and gone to the ESRB. So we already had our teen rating, I guess. And you did an animation of Wookiee on the Trandoshan Heavy.
Oh my God, I was just looking at that the other day. That was for this game?
You made it for this game, and you showed it to me, and I said, I don't think we can put it in. It was also a memory concern, but I had to go over and you showed me this. You were like, hey, I'm thinking about putting this in. And I looked at it and it was amazing. It's like the Wookiee tears the head off the Trandoshan Heavy and then spikes the head into the ground. and I'm like, because it was quite long, really. I mean, my bigger concern was memory because we were so tight on memory on the console that I was like, ooh.
Guys, that video actually have it. And I can't remember what happened. I think Wookiee does something to him. He picks him up like Hulk Hogan into a body slam, and then he whips him head first down into the ground and crumples like a little piece of paper.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like a Hulk scream at him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he finishes with that. Yeah. Oh my God. And I at the time I remember going, wow, that's so long. I'm just afraid to put it in because of where we were, and we were also this would have probably been in December or November or something. So there's like nobody left on the project. And I'm like, if this goes in and I don't know how to take it out because we're too close, I was just nervous because of where we were.
That would have been the highlight of the game, man. People
I hear this all the time from Tim. If only you hadn't been on this project, Brett, we would have had all these things.
It's funny that you brought that up, though, because Republic Commando from the very beginning was supposed to be more gritty, kind of like more, I don't want to use the word mature, but definitely gritty representation of Star Wars. It kind of started a movement where, after Republic Commando, my next half year, whatever it was, at LucasArts was basically, they didn't have a game for us. They were still working out. I think Hayden Blackman was running, but he was trying to figure out the next game that they were going to do. And they were very open to not doing just a Jedi game at this time. So me and Ryan Hood and Patrick Sirk and Matt Omernick and I'm sure there was a bunch of other people, but all we had to do for the next bunch of months was like, if you guys were going to make a Star Wars game, what would you make? So there was a Wookiee game where you got to play a giant hulking Wookiee, and it was going to be like the Incredible Hulk. Like you run around just tearing the world apart as a giant Wookiee. There was a bounty hunter game that was kind of like GTA, but you're a bounty hunter.
Right.
There was a Han Solo game where you're kind of like GTA style mercenary. You're running around the galaxy doing whatever you want. In that gray area where you can be good or bad. It's kind of a choice kind of game. And there was another game. And then there was another bounty hunter idea where halfway, maybe partially through the game, you figure out that you're actually a Jedi as well. So you play that a strange kind of mercenary / Jedi kind of game.
Oh, neat.
Really cool.
Yeah.
And all we were doing, me and Ryan Hood were just banging out with all these old models, just banging out ideas of like, you know, a Django fetish looking bounty hunter flying through the air, picking up a villain, shooting up into the air Avengers style, and then dropping them when you're a mile up and watching them fall. Or it kind of sent us off into this kind of like more gritty, violent, kind of oriented Star Wars ideas, which I think it was a fun playground to be in, but I think it got shut down at some point. Right. All these ideas accumulated and ended up being, they started doing a lot of focus testing, and they really got scared of not doing a lightsaber game again.
Right.
And it ended up being Force Unleashed, which I still think has a certain amount of grittiness to it. And a different depiction of Star Wars. So I think that all started in Republic Commando. It was all just kind of like this grittier kind of like movement that was happening.
Yeah.
I will also say, you know, I wanted to finish the story about that animation because I had to tell you no, but you were so cool about it. You were like, you know, man, I totally get it. Like, this is very 11th hour. Like, and I genuinely was really, and I remember I had you give me the video. I copied. I had that on a hard drive for a long time that I've since lost, but it was a thing I had that I held on to because I was just like, oh, this is too bad. You know, we never got to do more with this stuff. But I remember at that time really appreciating, like, you could have really given me a hard time, and, you know, and you weren't dispassionate about it, but you were also like, yeah, I get it. We've already submitted, we've got our whatever, and we're tight on memory. And like, I just told you like all the reasons why, and you're just like, yep. Okay. I got it.
I've always kind of thought of myself as a pragmatist, you know, and
yeah,
I really get a kick out of, I'm not a heavily ego-driven artist. I don't need my ideas, my art, my. I don't need that. I really, really just crave to be on a well-knit team, like a team that just gels, and everyone has ideas, and it doesn't matter where they come from, but they all kind of like, let's get to the higher ground together. Like, it doesn't matter whose ideas it is. So that's always been kind of like my motto, my spirit for working on teams. And I think I had a little taste of that at LucasArts, but I think the Republic Commando team was the kind of like epitome of that motto and that statement. It was just well organized, and it just felt like we didn't really go through any strife other than maybe, you know, we were very much on this gritty direction. And then when we heard from management that George wanted to give the characters names and give them personalities, we're like, they're clones. They don't have personalities. They're all the same.
Right, yeah.
You know, that was the only moment of tension where I think ultimately the right choice was made. Like, I think it was good for the game and allowed players to latch onto the characters. And, you know, if they didn't have personalities, it wouldn't have happened. So, but we were so headstrong in that kind of like gritty. No, this is different. It's not the old stuff. It's different. So that was the only time where we felt any kind of tension, really. But like I said, I don't think we had a choice. We didn't.
Yeah,
I still think it was the right choice. You know?
Yeah, we talked about it on previous episodes too, and sort of retold the similar history that you just told too, in that we were headstrong about it. That's a good way to put it. But you know, I mean, to your point, and I think sometimes, you know, the way that the team ran, if it ended up making sense, we did want to use it, you know, and if we could do it. And that was a big one coming from a really weird place, right? Because George didn't get involved in stuff like that too often.
Totally.
But you know, the ending of the game and what happens to Sev wouldn't have resonated if you didn't really know him, you know, right, exactly. as like the best example. And so it was the right call for sure. And it's just funny how it ended up happening or where it came from.
Visually, it was kind of cool. It allowed us to make a cool kind of costume for each of the clones, right? And that was, I think that was driven by what they were doing on the prequels too. Like all the clone troopers had different ranks, and they had different coloring on their shoulder pads or whatnot.
Well, it also heavily impacted writing, right? And just the script, and that was in a good way. And people still mention even the humor, which we talked a little bit about in previous episodes. That was another sort of bit of feedback that we extrapolated on and did our own version of. And that's actually a bit of a signature to that game is the the sort of the contrast of darkness and a bit of tongue-in-cheek humor and stuff here and there with Scorch especially.
My favorite games to work on are the ones where there's actual characters and they have great writing, and you can not only relate to them, but you're just entertained by the dialogue and the character arcs and things like that. Obviously, I went to Telltale after that, and that place was all about that.
Right.
And now again at Ascendant Studios now, and we've got a very much a strong driving force for having great characters and story in our game as well. It's our first AAA kind of product we're focused on making, but story is a big part of it too. And I always want to be a part of a project where the story is on the forefront because
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's what a perfect thing for animation to support, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Well, Dave, that was a good sort of segue to maybe closing up, and want to be sensitive to your time, like I said. But you just kind of mentioned where you are today. Obviously, what you guys are working on, you can't talk about. It's not announced, but Ascendant Studios is some ex Sledgehammer and EA folks, right?
Yeah. So Brett Robbins is our president and our CEO, or he's the head honcho and the guy who started up the studio. He was a creative director on Dead Space, and he worked on a lot of the Sledgehammer games, the Call of Duty stuff, and so I was lucky enough to land on his radar, and when he was just starting up his company, and super happy to be there. We just got a great project going. The writing is awesome. The world is awesome. The product it's really, quality is very important to us. So we're using Unreal, and we're trying to make a AAA product that just looks beautiful. And
awesome.
It's a very creative space to be in. I can't wait. I can't wait till we get our first one out the door.
Yeah, can't wait to hear more about it. See more about it. Well, thank you so much for being on. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Dave. That was really fun. Some stories I hadn't heard, certainly, and we didn't intersect. We only intersected on the one project, you and I. So, so it's good to hear some of the other stuff going on in the studio at the time too. For me,
yeah. Well, I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on. It was fun. Memory trip in here.
Oh my gosh. And as with our initial phone call when we caught up, you're just your wealth of storytelling going on, all sorts of fun stuff. So that was great.
Sure, I got another hour in me. You just let me talk.
Well, we'll do that someday too. So thanks so much, Dave.
You got to hit up Jeremy Talbot next. He lives across the street.
I know you said he's not far away. So funny.
I just bumped into him like the other a couple months ago, I think.
How
funny. Him walking around pushing a baby carriage. I'm like, what, Jeremy? Like,
wow.
So yeah, he's still at Pixar, and
yeah, right. Yeah, Jeremy's come up on pretty much every interview because he
did a lot more than I even realized.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was involved with pretty much everything, it seemed like, and kind of the glue, as we talked about, some tech art subjects. Yeah, so cool, Dave. Awesome. Well, thanks so much.
You guys are welcome. Thanks for thinking about me.
All right. Cheers.
All right. Bye-bye.
welcome back from the break and our conversation with Dave Bogan. That was great. That was fascinating. Like I said at the end, there's a lot of stuff that I hadn't heard, and other stuff that I could totally picture, like that conversation with Daron.
Yeah, and there's even others that he kind of, he said on cast, like he could keep going. Dave's got a lot of stories. He seems to like telling stories. He's got a great sense of humor about it, and great memory for it. So yeah, it's super fun. And that animation team is amazing, and that game is very animation focused in a lot of ways. And I think that a large part of its success is due to those guys. And
I think he's right about the trigger discipline as well. I think that when you turn the gun on its side, the finger's out.
Huh? Yeah.
In the game, I think
I meant to go look because he told me beforehand. I wanted to go look and see if he was right, because he couldn't remember if it actually happened or not. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, and it's just a dedicated team, dedicated animation team, and they all were really into it. So it's good to have him on. And again, once again, another discipline that we have underrepresented. I think animation is just so critical. It's one of the pillars of especially projects like that. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of getting into the era where the 3D animation is really coming into its own as well, right? Yeah. And before this, he did mention like the cutscenes on Bounty Hunter and things like that, where you were seeing, some really great animation. I mean, we even had that in like that Soul Reaver has some really good third person, animation in the cutscenes, in particular, where he gets his, wings ripped off and things like that. But yeah, this is really kind of this time where they really put a lot into that, and that was a big part of the game for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So good to hear his perspective. So yeah, it was pretty cool. And also, I didn't know that. I had forgotten that he was also Canadian.
Right.
And that he had been, I worked with Chris Miles on Full Throttle 2. He was the lead artist on that. And so I kind of knew when he was saying that, I was like, oh, that's right. Cause Chris went up to Sheridan's while I was working with him, one week in, April or May or whatever, as well. So definitely. To recruit. Yeah. I
think I remember that. I think I met Chris on Indiana Jones. I think he was one of the animators on that, maybe. And we played a lot of stuff.
Oh, that sounds right. Yeah. That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well,
so yeah.
There we go.
Book review, huh?
I do. I have, a recommendation. I don't do a full review.
Sorry,
but,
not a review, but a book recommendation. Yeah.
I was trying to think about what to do for a Brett's book recommendation this time out, and it's hard to come down because I don't read like Star Wars stuff. But I did a couple of years ago, I guess now, read a short series of novellas, which is getting followed up by a novel this year by Martha Wells called The Murderbot Diaries. And they all have different names that have things to do with AI and stuff. But what I liked about it is kind of it's a gritty story to some degree, sort of a little space opera, like, there's a sprawl of planets and people are going all over the place, and kind of got a little bit of sort of almost cyberpunky, kind of like corporations have a lot of control over everything and all of that stuff. But the other tie that I think makes it really tie in well with Republic Commando is that it is to some degree about becoming an individual against sort of the other ones that are like you. So the Murderbot in this case is the name that he's given himself. this AI sort of this robot. Sort of. You have to read it to really understand what's going on. But they are great short little, 150 page, 200 page novellas. And like I said, Martha Wells has a full length novel that I think is just out now, like in the last few weeks or this summer or something like that. I think I actually have it coming in the library soon. So I'm sure I will recommend that one as well to people who ask. But yeah, look up the Murderbot Diaries. There are 4 of them in the novella series, and I highly recommend it. So that is my recommendation for this time.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's terrific. It's also got that kind of like you're in armor, you're in kind of body armor as Murderbot. It's all first person. So there's lots of like nice little ties to Republic Commando, I think, that makes it a good fit. So I recommend it.
Cool. Good one.
Thank you. Let's go now to email. I think I gave you a somewhat short one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I have the longer one. Yeah, go ahead with the short one first, and then I'll take the other one.
Okay. Thanks for everything, especially Chrono Trigger from Mark. Hi, guys. I've been meaning to send this one for a while. I wanted to thank you for the excellent Chrono Trigger series you did earlier in the year. It's been a pretty rough time for a lot of people, but your series was a highlight of the last few months for me. Playing through Chrono Trigger again and listening to your podcast brought me a real sense of nostalgia and joy during what was otherwise a pretty bleak period. It's not the first time you've done it either. Back in late 2017, when I'd just moved to a foreign country and was at a bit of a low point, I played along with your Ultima Underworld playthrough, and it's still one of my favorite memories from back then. Anyway, I just wanted to say thanks for the amazing work you do on the podcast and let you know how much I appreciate it. Cheers, Mark. Wow, Mark, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Very kind words, and glad we can help doing this crazy thing we do with this thing. But
yeah, and also right now, I mean, I know that I make snarky comments about it from time to time, but believe me, I know how everybody is feeling right about now with the, especially here in the States, with the sort of isolation and how nuts everything has been. So I get it. I feel you, and happy to be there in your ears. We don't dwell on that aspect of what's going on that much because we want you to come here and have a respite, I guess. But yeah, thanks for listening along and playing along.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially the playing along. We don't really ever know how many people actually do that with us. And it's cool to hear stories when people do. In Chrono Trigger, looking back, as everyone knows very well that I'm not a big JRPG person, but that game, even for me, having played it for the first time, nostalgia wise, and just, I don't know, it's a kind of, I have a positive memory of playing it. It's just kind of a delightful game, even though it's obviously heavy, serious topics. It's just delightful, and just, good spirited in various ways. So I can see how it would be a good thing to play at this weird time.
Well, let me tell you, Tim, about Super Mario RPG, maybe our next game.
Oh, yeah. How's that going?
Oh, it's been great. It's delightful, but you're not even a Mario guy. So it's like, I don't have a hook to pull you in on.
Is it essentially a JRPG or what is it?
It's definitely a JRPG. It's sort of one of the, so the thing with the Mario RPGs is that they have a more active battle with like a timing element. Sometimes you're mashing on a button. Sometimes you're just timing, like hit this and you'll get more damage when you do the thing. It's a pretty light JRPG from that standpoint. There's not a ton of like elemental, hoo-ha, of like other weak against this. That's very common in JRPGs. This is more straightforward. So, but enjoyable nonetheless. Made by Square and Nintendo. So, hi, June.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. There's June. Sorry, they're having a hard time simmering her down.
So, a lot of fun. I've been streaming that. Well, let's go to that second email then. We get in and out of here relatively quick today. The subject is Republic Commando's Mandela Effect from Bill. Hey, Brett and Tim. I've been subscribed to your podcast forever, but never got around to actually listening to any episodes until I saw Republic Commando pop up in the feed and realized that you guys worked on that. I found your inside scoop and analysis fascinating, and I've been going through your backlog. One quick question about Republic Commando for the cast. For years, I've apparently had a weird Mandela effect-like feeling about the game. I could swear that I have clear memories of playing the campaign in co-op with my brother, with him controlling one of the other troopers. Obviously, in our universe, that's impossible because Republic Commando did not have campaign co-op. I am wondering if you have met or heard of anyone who has this same memory. I see two possibilities. One, Republic Commando's AI was so convincing that the haziness of my memory reconstructed the experience as having been played with an actual human. Or two, Republic Commando is yet another indication that at some point some of us switch universes and we are now living on Earth 2. Which do you think is more likely? Bill. I don't know. What do you think, Tim? I have actually a third option, which I'll explain.
Oh, do you? Yeah, that's a good one. Bill, was it? It was Bill?
Yes, Bill, yes.
Yeah. The funny thing is I have had multiple people tell me that there's co-op in that game. and they were convinced that there was. So you're not alone, Bill, of having some weird memory of it. And I've actually gotten to the point when someone brings it up, I don't even correct them anymore. I just like, yeah, because it's like, it's one of those conversations or arguments where you're trying to argue someone's memory. But
let me explain.
Okay.
The other thing that it could be. So I had meant to sort of surprise you.
Oh no.
I'm so you may remember that we actually had a way to support co-op in the game. We had QA had found a bug, which we then said we weren't going to fix, which was it was possible basically to start the server, have a co-op thing, and then by just joining the server in a regular level map, not a co-op or not a deathmatch map or whatever.
Okay.
You may not remember that, but that was the thing. Johnny Zeri was like so excited when I just closed it and said we're not going to fix it. Everybody cheered. It was one of those things where it's like everybody knows, like, hey, we know you could fix this, but don't fix it. So the third option, is that not only did I not fix this, but in a small percentage of games, this is enabled. Call it a stray cosmic ray or whatever. And it just happens that you just have co-op. So, it could be that.
What are you talking about?
Well, I'm just saying some bit is flipped somewhere and, you just press a button on the controller and look, you're in there. Like, because it was a possible thing to happen, And
yeah.
It's a manufacturing defect. I mean, it's like, number 5.
Right.
So,
okay. Yeah, that could be it. The matchmaking happened and there's no interface for it, but it just kind of magically
it just pops in, like it just gives you another like, oh, I don't know what to do with these two controller presses. Might as well just let them control this one.
Yeah. So now it's kind of it's like a exploit / Easter egg that people could actually just try to go replicate.
I think it is possible with the shipping game on the PC to actually have a co-op experience. But you have to I think you have to use console commands or something to actually start a server, load the level, and then you'll be in there. I mean, you'll have friendly fire on and things like that. So it totally doesn't, the game does not support it. It doesn't scale for it and none of that stuff. All of the reasons why we cut it are true. But it is possible, I think, to actually play the game that way with either a local server or a dedicated server. So.
Wow. Okay. Well, there you go. Yeah. That's hilarious.
Unlikely that he would have played that way on his TV, unless, of course, like I said, stray cosmic ray. So.
Yeah. I think I think a lot of it has to do with the genre and how it's now commonplace, right? For it to be in there and people just retcon it in their head. And they look back and they just assume it was, because it was a squad game. Right.
Yeah.
So that's what
it's also entirely possible that his brother just looks like Tamara Morrison. So
and talks like
he just looked over the coach, looked over on the couch, or maybe he looks like the young Boba. I forget who the young actor was who played Boba Fett.
Yeah, right.
And when he was growing up, he just looked over and was like, "Oh yeah, that's one of me," So.
Good work.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for the email, Bill, and Mark as well. Those, of course, were sent to devgameclub@gmail.com. That is our show for the week. You can find us on the web at devgameclub.com or on Twitter at devgameclub, where you can also find my co-host at
Tim Longwood Jr. with a JR at the end.
I already mentioned what I've been playing on stream, but you can find me there at twitch.tv/Brett Duvel. Thanks so much for joining us this week, and good night.
Right.